Hi there. This is the Global Links Corporate Training. This is the mining series. This is season 1. And I'm your host, Mr. Stembizo Pagati. I would like to introduce my guest, Mahene. Please introduce yourself, sir, and welcome to our podcast. And maybe tell us what you do and how you're related to the tech in mining and the type of work that you do for your mining clients.
Awesome. No, thanks, Te, for having me around. You know, the last time I was asked this question to introduce myself, I was doing a job interview.
Job interview?
Yes, with one of the mining companies.
I'm glad this is noted. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, look, so I'm Mahene Benzane.
Benzane,
and I'm the CEO of a company called SmartOps, which I founded back in 2015.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So we currently running a number of offices. We've got our head office here in Centurion.
Yeah.
We've got an office in Rustenburg, an office in Middelburg, as well as in Katu. So you can already tell all those offices are surrounding the mines. You know,
surrounding the mines.
Yeah. So we do quite a lot of work in the mining space with a clinical focus in digital transformation.
Oh, okay.
So we help mining organizations with their digital transformation strategies, their roadmaps, and also help them with the implementation of those.
Wow.
But we also have a bunch of softwares or technologies that we sell to various mining clients. Then we also have another division that focuses on management consulting, but not your typical management consulting. Solely focused on the business optimization side of
business ops
of mining operations. We're also into energy management, e-health, and also just a little bit of mining services.
Oh, that's nice.
Awesome.
That's
then by qualification, you know, I've got a master's in digital technologies and digital businesses. So I was one of the first people, or the first cohort.
To be qualified
in that
in digital transformation.
Yes, particularly with the Vets Business School.
Okay.
But I've done many other qualifications throughout my career.
Wow.
Started working with a couple of geologists in the manganese field. I was working for BHP Billiton. So that's the first mining company I worked for.
Yeah.
Then I've moved roles around, went into mining, went into business optimization, then technology. But I still call myself a geologist, even though my master's, and I've pivoted, you know,
in tech,
long time away from that particular field.
That's nice. Yeah. No, that's a big CV. Thanks, Mahene. My first question to you is what is the take-up or the appetite of technology in mining, and is it still seen as a foe or a friend? Or is it seen as a foe or a friend, or are mining organizations really taking up opportunities to optimize their operations using tech?
Yeah, look, it's a very interesting question that you're asking. And what I've seen with a lot of mining houses is that this whole concept of 4IR in mining, a lot of mining organizations are starting to embrace that. Yeah. And how you see that they're starting to embrace that is because they've now started forming departments that solely look at digital transformation.
Dedicated for that.
So it shows us that, you know, there is a little bit of appetite, but, you know, we can talk more about the adoption of technology, you know, the trends in terms of what kind of technologies these mines are going into. You know, but just to answer your question from an appetite perspective, it's there. But we still see quite a lot of mining operations still struggling and not really understanding you know, what this thing is all about. Other people understand it from the book, just on paper. Other mining organizations see it as a nice to have, so fancy things. You know, so, and it also talks to the adoption side of these things. You know, so if you find a lot of people that have been in the industry so used to doing things a certain way, then you come and say, look, guys, maybe we can do it better.
I'm with you.
Improve our efficiencies, improve our safety,
but those that are taking the lead, Mahene, what are we seeing the benefits that they are reaping? Those that are taking the lead on the tech adoption, what are we seeing?
So there is quite a number of benefits that technology adoption brings in mining. So the obvious ones is that, you know, technology does actually help us improve safety. safety. And you know that safety is one of the biggest things for mining organizations. Production is also important. So people can mine efficiently these days and productively, through the use of technology. But over and above that, cost is also a big element.
That's a big one.
Right? So by introducing technology, you're also able to minimize your costs. You're also able to increase your efficiencies and the productivity of your workforce. You're also able to increase your safety for your operations. So when it comes to the clinical benefits of technology in mining, it has to be around those pillars that I've just indicated right now.
Talking about those pillars, are there specific technological advancements or tools that are leading in the mining sector that you've seen? And in the previous discussion, we talked a little bit about AI, and we talked IoT, predictive maintenance. We talked about sensing and those kinds of things. And maybe are there trends that you are seeing around what types of technologies they are implementing?
Yeah, so there is quite a lot, but to be honest with you, it's a case by case kind of a situation. Different mining operations have got different needs, and hence it's extremely important that before you start buying any kind of technology, you need to have a core understanding of where your challenges are. And that's one of the things that we also do quite well in the space that I'm in. Go into an operation, understand where the key challenges are, then be able to say this is how technology can enhance and help the mining organization. So
it's not guesswork.
It's not guesswork. It's not because you've got
to do some real work.
It's not because you've got a very great platform
that
can predict whether the equipment is going to fail or not, and you just boom rush and say, let's just implement this. Because this also talks to return on investment.
Of course.
And it also talks to adoption. And it also talks to what I personally call practical digital transformation in mining. So a good example of, some of the leading techs in the mining sector, it's what we'd call a connected worker.
Connected worker, yes. Yeah, I know
so
about it.
With connected worker, there could be sensors, from an IoT perspective. There could be lots of data that goes to maybe an integrated operations center or an F center. But then if you've got the person that execute work at the face, not having this information readily available to them to help them make the right decisions, and also be able to see how they impact other parts of the operation in the value chain, it becomes a problem. So when you implement a solution, you need to make sure that solution addresses problems. If it doesn't address problems,
it must be a solution.
Yes, people get to see it as a nice to have, and they start feeling like, I'm working for this system. I need to be feeding it with information instead of the other way around, right? So we see quite a lot of that, whereby operations are now saying, how do we connect our workers to the entire value chain? Extremely important. From a maintenance perspective, or call it asset management perspective.
Asset management, yes.
We're seeing quite a lot of groundbreaking technology in terms of predictive maintenance to say, clinically the OEM will dictate to us as to when and how we need to be maintaining. But that's theoretical. But these machines are actually providing us with a lot of data. And that data is the data that when you then plug into this AI tools, the algorithms, you are now able to predict when the machine is. It's more accurate than a human being. Right? So those are some of the technological advances that we're seeing in mining. And from a safety perspective, you might know about your PDSs, proximity detection systems. Those have been there for quite a while. But now, we're moving into spaces where we can predict whether people have entered zones that they're not supposed to be entering. We can predict whether that zone, is it supported? Is the roof supported when the person entered or not? And we are currently developing something in line with that for one of our clients in the coal sector. I can't mention that right now, but it's actually a use of combination of technologies and things that existed. And the power of tech is that you can take things that existed before and try and create something new.
And almost,
right?
so we're talking about the digital twin, in another conversation, that you can actually mimic an existing plant or model and mimic it with using technological twin.
Absolutely. And maybe just while you're still on the digital twin, we just completed a project for one of the big coal mining organizations. So they wanted to avoid making mistakes that a lot of companies keep on making when they want to implement a digital twin. So implementing a digital twin is a journey as well.
Process.
You also need to know where to start. Exactly. You need to understand what are the benefits that you will be getting from implementing the digital twin. So you avoid this thing of just bringing a big thing and you're already expecting people to be working with
and
this.
it's too overwhelming,
so
for the workforce.
Right? And it takes forever before you can really get to the maturity levels that you need. And it goes back to the issue of adoption. If you start doing a project of that nature and it takes too long for people to start seeing results, you're bound to fail. So change management, they'll abandon it and they'll go to their old ways.
Now back to the old ways
of doing things, you know. And the change management aspect of it is very, 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 very critical. You need to understand the personas that you work with. You need to do detailed assessments. You know, you need to build those relationships, take people with you throughout the journey so that they understand what this thing is about. Because there's a perception out there that technology is there to replace our jobs. You know, and it's not about that. And as you're doing that, you are also able to address issues that have to do with skills. The gaps that might exist. But there's many other challenges as well, right, when it comes to adoption of these technologies. You find that some of the mining organizations, they don't have the right infrastructure. So there's a lot of investment that needs to be done, you know, before they can actually get to the required end state.
We're going to come back to change adoption and readiness for change and navigating that path. I want to go back to the work that you do in organizations around doing feasibility work before a tech adoption is landed.
Yes.
Well, I mean, what does that look like? What does it take? What kind of study do you go in and assess infrastructure, appetite of the workforce, how change adoption? What kind of work do you do upfront before you advise the client to actually go ahead and implement a solution?
Yeah, so it's two things, right? So we do a qualitative kind of a study and a quantitative kind of a study. So from a quantitative kind of a study perspective, we would look at, let's say, production as an example. So we look at what is it that you're always forecasting? What are your budgets? And how often do you hit your targets? And we look at your production profile. Do you have high variability within your production? You know, is your production profile predictable that tomorrow this is what I can achieve? And what we tend to see is that a lot of processes, they are actually operating outside the required limits, right? So we do that analysis to understand what's the potential of you probably even shifting your production upwards, just also by minimizing the variability. So we would go and do a detailed statistical analysis. We map out the process.
And using their data points, I would imagine, of course.
Yes, correct.
Using their information.
Correct. We're using their information. But then we also get to interview the people that are champions or that participate in a specific process.
The value chain.
Yes, because the numbers can tell you one thing, but there's other things that you can
need
find.
Bit of both.
Bit of both. Right? So we do that. And when we finally say, as a mine, this is where you need to start when you do a digital twin, and these are the benefits, because we can pinpoint exactly where the benefits are going to come from. And we can actually go to an extent of saying these are the monetary values or benefits that you'll ultimately get from
so
doing
you actually
this.
Develop a business case.
Yes,
because they may have identified the solution, but you almost want to validate that the conditions or your production cycles actually tell a story, and is this solution going to be the right one for you?
Correct, absolutely.
And build a business case.
Yes, and we play in that space a lot where we don't necessarily have a solution that we're selling, but we can help them get the right solution.
The right solution. Even if it doesn't come from you.
Yes, even if it doesn't come from us,
because
it's a feasibility study, right? And what we've also seen is that a lot of mining organizations, they tend to buy things that are just exciting.
But they're not relevant.
They're not relevant
for their challenges.
For their challenges. And I think there is a big benefit from somebody that understands the entire value chain of mining and they pivoted to technology in mining because these people can always bring the right things for the organization.
Just because something is trending, I was actually interviewing someone on a different podcast that because there's this frenzy about digital transformation and there's frenzy about cloud solutions. Everybody wants to go on cloud.
Yes.
But even if your chassis infrastructure is non-consistent, is non-existent, but you want to bring a cloud solution, and then people, as you said earlier, they're going to say, "What are you doing? And what's the ROI on this thing?"
Yes. No, absolutely.
So that's very good. But before we talk tech adoption, what have you seen the role of leaders, the appetite of leaders in this sector to embrace tech, especially the older ones, the Gen X's and the boomers that are leading these mining operations? What's the appetite when you talk to them about tech?
Look, so their appetite is quite interesting. So in literature, there is something we call leadership in a digital world.
Yes.
Right? So your clinical leadership styles are still there; they won't go away.
Yeah,
but there's certain elements,
old conventional ones.
But there's certain elements that you need to start having in order to be able to thrive and lead in a way that fits the current situation.
In a digital world,
the situation has changed now compared to how we used to do things in the past. But what I get to appreciate about those leaders that might be having this resistance to change, it's purely because they've got a clinical understanding of their operations.
Okay.
And they want things that are practical.
Okay.
Right. So when you bring things that are not practical,
that you can't see immediately,
you've lost them and they just don't want it.
And it's a fear of loss of control.
Yes. And sometimes it's about getting to be able to show them that this thing that we are currently doing is not changing. We're just enhancing it. This is how it's going to operate. So
you're not throwing it out.
They want to feel it. They want to touch
and
it.
Smell it.
And what also makes it easier for them is that if you've done an implementation somewhere else, or maybe somebody else has done a similar implementation at a different mining company, them getting to talk with a leader at that particular organization to understand what has been done, what does it mean.
It puts them at ease.
It puts them at ease. So that's why it's extremely important that
it's
you
use
always...
cases and case studies.
Exactly. You need to share that from people that are similar to them. Right?
In the same sector.
In the same sector. So it makes it much easier. But a lot of them are actually struggling to embrace certain technological
because they can't visualize, like as I said earlier, they want practical results, and then sometimes using digital solutions, you don't immediately see practical results.
Correct.
But you see results in the ultimate outcome, business outcomes.
Yes.
But not in the day-to-day.
Yes,
sometimes
absolutely.
it's not that.
Absolutely.
And then when you show them those case studies and the things that you've implemented elsewhere, does that change perceptions around tech?
Look, it does.
I would hope it does.
It does. It does because I don't know if you've seen a technology adoption curve.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So
it's almost belly.
You've got your early adopters,
and then the laggards on the other side.
The laggards on the other side. Most of them actually fall on the other side.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? So somebody else needs to have taken this up and somebody needs to have proven that it works.
only do it when somebody else has done
exactly.
it.
And what I've seen in the mining space is that a lot of people are not courageous to take career suicidal actions.
Yeah, it's because it's risk.
Because it's risk.
They're very risk averse.
Yes, I'm going to spend so much money. I get to implement this thing and it never
works. And the
works.
outcome is not guaranteed.
And my name is in the mud.
On the line.
So you also have that. And I think it's something that we need to change when it comes to our leaders in mining. We need to embrace a culture of failure, a culture of
and it's
let's
okay
try
to try
things,
something and fail.
You know, as long as that thing is not going to kill a person,
of course,
right?
It's worth trying.
We need to embrace that culture. You know, I worked for this other mining organization, and there was a very small budget.
Yeah.
It was not that huge, but it was a budget to try out things.
Sure.
Right? Whether it works or it doesn't work, you know, people don't cry foul about it. But
nobody would be crucified.
Nobody will be crucified, but you have to try out things. And you find people that create solutions because they heard that there is a specific problem.
Oh, okay.
Right? And that as well becomes a challenge sometimes when you don't understand the mining operations and how things operate. But do you share with your clients those case studies where things have been tried and they failed, and then maybe something else came out of it, and then because also that kind of failure tells a story that you can learn from it. Do you sometimes share those cases? We do that. Because it's quite important for them to understand.
Sometimes you learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly, you know. So we do share that. We do share to say, look, you can't do it this way. You need to do it that way. But what we also do quite well, or what needs to be done quite well in the mining industry, is being able to show a mining organization where they fall when it comes to a technology quadrant.
Okay.
You know, you've got fashionistas, for example.
Sure.
It's people that just buy every tech.
They want to be the first for everything.
They want to be the first for everything, you know. But you need to make sure that they move to the right quadrant, which actually they've got a strong tech and they've got very strong management operating systems. But it's all leadership.
It's all leadership. I'm glad, Ella, you touched on change adoption, because I'm a big advocate for strategic change and how it's done. It can only be done correctly, or it shouldn't be done. What have you seen, generally speaking, within the mining sector around the appetite for change, and are the leaders and even employees really tuned up to the idea of new ideas, changing into new ways of doing things? Because I also teach on the future of work in a different podcast, and I ask my guests to think about how can we imagine a world where work is done differently. Can we help people visualize that state? Because for people to change, is you almost want to want them to experience that place before it happens. Yes. But based on what you've seen, what's the appetite, generally speaking, especially when you talk tech? Around change.
Look, the appetite, like I said, is there. But what I've seen quite a lot with a lot of mining organizations is that they are always fighting fires.
Okay, right?
Reaction, always fighting fires. There's issues with production. There's many issues. And it's very difficult to get those individuals to start thinking outside of the box, thinking about innovative solutions. So that's why it's extremely important that when you deal with a mining organization, first understand the challenges. And if you've got a business improvement department that might also be leading the digital side of the mining organization, you want them to focus on things that makes their production predictable. Because when the production is there, you need to get people to be bored. People need to think about what else can I do, right? So that's why even from an adoption perspective, when I know that my production, I'm always ahead, I'm always hitting the targets, it becomes easier for me as a leader of a specific area to say, what more can I try and do differently? You know, so the fighting fires is what normally takes away their focus into these innovative solutions that they need to be focusing on.
Because always reacting to what's wrong.
Yes, reacting to what's wrong, problem and whatnot. But the element of change, what for me makes it important is being able to take people through the journey. I'll give you an example, and you will realize that I like using examples because we don't want to make this very theoretical, right? So one organization, a mining organization, approached us, and they said, we want to implement a technology that does this, and it doesn't exist in the mining space.
Oh, okay.
But with that technology, there's a whole lot of other issues that come in. Your other stakeholders in this thing is your unions. So we had to go and present to the unions and explain to them what is it that we're planning on doing. Because
it
they don't want technology to be used as a stick,
okay.
right? So those fundamental issues, you need to get them right way ahead of time. So we had to then now build a simulation, a model that is visual. Without making it very theoretical, they can see it
before.
Oh, okay, so it's going to work like this. Oh, right, it makes perfect sense. And that's part of change management as well.
It is, of course.
Because another example, if you implement a system to track, let's say, people underground, already there is a red flag there.
A red flag, yeah.
It's like, why do you want to know
why you want to see our movement? Yeah.
So you can come with all sorts of
as long as productivity
brilliant,
is there.
Yeah, you can come up with all sorts of brilliant reasons as to why.
They'll resist.
If there is an incident, we know where to locate you, we can find you, but they will tell you that
we don't want to be watched.
I don't want to be watched, right? So you need to take people through that.
Unless you play those scenarios through a simulation to show that it's for safety, it's for your health, it's for productivity and those kinds of things. But every time I teach my clients around change management, I always remember this thing around WIIFM, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
If the worker cannot see how I'm going to benefit through this change, you've lost them. And if you cannot explain the benefit to them, not to the company and not to the shareholder, but to the worker,
yes,
you've lost before you start.
No, true. Absolutely.
So that's very important so that it's for your safety, it's for you to be able to do the most important things as opposed to other things, and machines can take care. Because our discussions around AI was also there, that how do you make people realize that tech should be seen as a co-worker or talent or as a colleague as opposed to someone taking my job. Is that easy to explain to a rock driller or an operator underground, saying this piece of technology is your colleague as opposed to someone threatening to take your job? Is that easy to articulate?
Look, it's easy to articulate, and I think the big problem comes from technology organizations.
Okay.
And I'll explain why I'm saying the problem comes from technology organizations. It's purely because you've got a bunch of smart people that sit around and they look for opportunities and they create solutions without really understanding
the issues,
right? And without really understanding the person part of this entire ecosystem.
The person component of the issue.
And when we come with those technologies and you sell it to an organization, they see functionality. Oh, it can do this, it can do that, it can do that. And you try and want to implement that, and it becomes a problem. But the very same solution that you've developed, if you go, then you take it to the basics and ask that rock drill operator or that truck operator, and ask them, what are some of the issues that you're experiencing?
Oh, that would make your job easier.
Yeah, that will make your job easier. Make it look like
it came from them.
It came from them.
They'll own it.
And they'll own it because they were part of that discussion.
And they'll implement it.
And they will implement it. And the funny thing about human behavior is that we all don't want to fail. We understand that failure is part of life, but we all don't want to fail.
Experience it.
So they will make sure that this thing that they were part of co-creating or even co-implementing or co-ideating before implementation, they will make sure that this thing works, right? So we need to get to that level whereby we don't just impose things to people.
The feedback should be solicited, especially from the worker who works in that value chain or process.
Yes.
Because that input is quite critical.
Yeah.
What about the illusion, Mahene, that everyone is excited about being upskilled or reskilled? I was talking to another group of my clients and I said I went into a coal mine last year, and I spoke to one of the haul truck drivers, and I said, "How would you feel if this truck was driven autonomously? If you had to drive this truck from an office, from a NEF center, from head office. And by the way, not only can you drive this truck, you can drive 2 other trucks simultaneously. How do you feel about that?" And this guy said, "Listen, I've been doing this work for 17 years and I'm 8 years old. I'm not interested in driving the same thing from a computer. If you're going to replace me with a computer, give me my VSP, give me my pension, let me go home." So that proves that not everyone is going to be excited about being tech or being upskilled into doing things remotely. How do we teach leaders to check, back to your example, that not everyone is going to want to be upskilled to do things with their hands? Some just get excited by being in the truck, smelling the diesel, hearing the noise, and seeing the dust and being part of the work. Is there something we can tell our leaders that sometimes it's an illusion that everyone is going to be excited about tech and want to be upskilled?
Yeah, so the issue of upskilling is very close to my heart, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've been to Velcom before.
Yes, I know Velcom, yes. Yeah.
So I've had an opportunity of being in Velcom when I was still very young, and one of my brothers had friends in that area working in the mines. And, that city looks different now from what it looked like. It's a very small city.
Has it changed?
Yeah,
I haven't been there many years. A small town, yeah.
And with all these retrenchments that have been happening because of the cost pressures, the low metal prices in the industry, already, I think, if I'm not mistaken, South Africa employs just over 500,000 people in the mining sector.
In the mining sector. Mm-hmm.
And majority of those people is black people.
Black, of course.
And there's still lots of black techs, and our families are big.
Extended families.
So that number, you probably can multiply by 5 or 10,
or 4,
right?
Even more.
That's the impact. So when we approach technology, it's extremely important that we also get to understand the socio-economic problems that we are sitting with as a country. Another good example is the whole drive to decarbonization, coal-fired power plants.
Energy.
But you've got a whole Emalahleni wheat bank.
It's supporting the communities.
The economy, actually is around mining of coal. And you've got this narrative that, okay, this needs to change because there's a bigger problem. We understand. It doesn't mean we don't need to address that problem. And as and when we approach mining tech as well, instead of just replacing a person, because the reason why you replace is because of the cost of operating that autonomously. It's cheaper. The safety aspect of
it. It's
cheaper.
There's no fatigue.
There's no fatigue. You can sweat the assets.
Exactly.
But we need to be very mindful of our situation as a country. And hence, the role of leaders is to make sure that the implementation of these technologies also takes that into consideration. Because the fact is, we cannot stop it. It's there. So BHP already has a mine that's a combination of autonomous as well as
and conventional.
Right? People operating trucks and trucks actually operating themselves. But to take this individual outside of a truck and put them in a NEF center, and they still have got the same controls and all that. It's actually the same thing.
It doesn't feel the same to them.
But it doesn't feel the same. Like you said, they want to still smell that diesel. They still want to be there on the radio, talk to other guys, passing the other guys,
experience.
Seeing each other, right? But we do have, those people are extremely capable of being upskilled,
of shifting
to something else, because they've already operated in that environment.
It's a quick survey to do. In this particular mine, they had 27 truck operators. And I said, when I went back to the room, I said, that's just one driver I happened to talk to outside. But there are 27 of them. And in a shift, you probably have got 9 or 8. But just talk to them. regardless of age or tenure or gender, just ask, how would you feel if you had to drive the same truck from an office?
Yeah.
And by the way, these are the benefits of doing so. And by the way, you can drive 2 other trucks at the same time. And just ask the appetite. That's why I was asking Divan earlier about outskilling, because then if they're not interested, but this is the way to go, you can skill them in something else.
So the issue of interest. So I look at life this way. So I've got parents.
Sure.
They had parents. Their parents had parents. And as life goes on, there's generations that actually go underground. We bury them, and there's generations that come.
Sure.
And mining is still critical, not only for South Africa, but for the entire world. So you've got, how do we convince, they call them Ma-2000 now.
Yes.
How do you convince
the younger
Ma-2000s to say, hey, consider a career in mining?
Okay.
Right? Go and become a truck operator.
Yeah.
What's going to interest them is not really going into that truck.
Yeah.
That's too hot.
To operate
so we need to think about the generations that have to take this industry forward.
Exactly.
Those are the people that we need to be solving problems for.
Yeah.
It's like having a minister of youth that's 75.
That is
it's a problem,
8 years old.
right? So that
sense.
person can't really relate to the issues of the youth. That person doesn't go to clubs. That person doesn't go to all these other things that these kids are going to.
Their
kids are the ones doing
that.
So we shouldn't be too worried about the upskilling of the current generation.
We can get the ones that are
generation before this tech gets to be rolled out to an extent that trucks are just operating themselves. Most of these people, I can tell you, would have retired and would have had a new generation there. And this generation wants technology. They want to boost their ego when they are with their friends, to say, hey, you know what, I operate 2 trucks and I can still be on a phone call with my family.
Or be on WhatsApp.
And be on WhatsApp and do all these other things.
Yeah.
So that generation is not going to have an issue with this kind of
That's
technology.
actually what I said to my client. I said, retire this gentleman that's 48 years old. Give him skills to be productive in society. Go grade 12 dropout or university dropout student who's 21 years old, and train them to drive an autonomous truck.
No, absolutely.
That 21-year-old dropout in a university would embrace that idea, but not the 48-year-old.
But remember, with AI and these autonomous, systems, there's information we need to feed them.
Okay.
There's certain things that a human can do that these computers, regardless of how much they can't do, right? But they will get there at some point. So these individuals still become very critical, even from a training perspective and imparting that kind of knowledge, right? So if he operates an excavator remotely and loads a truck, there's certain techniques that as an individual, when you sit in there, you know that if my loading pad is not at the right height, that's what I need to do so that I can still load effectively. There's quite a lot of things. And they can still play a greater role or part in terms of imparting that knowledge. And we must find a way of how do we feed these systems with that kind of knowledge that a person just keeps within themselves. You know?
And
so there is
also,
room for
also
everyone.
emphasizing the impact on safety, efficiency, productivity, and those things. Because fatigue, statistics show us that most incidents and accidents, especially underground, are caused by fatigue. It's not because of lack of skill.
Yes.
It's not because people are working at the wrong time. It's fatigue. And when people can doze off at work and they are in front of a belt, and their hands are caught up, it's a disaster. So I think the other thing is to emphasize the benefits. To your point earlier, if you emphasize benefits to the company, the shareholder, and people are saying, oh, okay, so what do I get out of this? I'm slowly being gotten rid of. I want to come to this point as we approach the close, Mahene. What is the role of other external stakeholders in embracing tech? The government, the regulator, the Minerals Council, unions. Is there a way to get all these stakeholders to rally behind embracing tech, especially understanding the benefits, especially around safety and productivity?
Yeah, so they play a very crucial role. So I'll start off with the unions.
Sure.
So unions, anything that makes their members unhappy, they will be with their members.
Yeah, they'll defend it.
Yes, but what I've seen is that unions are actually open to conversations.
Sure.
They need clarity, transparency. They need every little element of whatever could be
every detail,
a challenge or a problem to them answered.
Yes.
And what sometimes minds tend to do is they don't divulge, all the details. Then later on, this thing is running and it's been used for other things, like being used as a stick or whatever the case is, right? So it's very, very important that, unions in particular, we get them to really understand and we teach them how these things actually work and what's the ultimate intent, which they do understand. Their view is actually the same as that of the mine. They want their members to be safe. They want the mine to thrive, make money. They want their workers to get bonuses and all that.
Okay.
So all the stakeholders share a common goal.
Yeah.
The problem is the how part.
The how.
How do you get everybody to be, call it a government of national unity of minds, if I can put it that way. So that's where the big challenge is. But with the engagements we had recently with the union, you could see that they're interested.
They're actually open-minded.
In fact, they even give ideas. They say, no, but can you do it? Can you try this? Can we do that? And you're like, okay, so where are you thinking of placing these sensors? Then you're like, no, we're thinking it. They're like, it's not going to work because they've worked.
Because they are part of the operation.
So it's about that. But unions, I can tell you, they are not against technology. They are against technology that's going to be used as a stick for the members.
For the members.
So when we look at, let's say, DMRE, for instance, as a custodian of the industry at the highest level, or even looking at the Minerals Council and all that, and many other associations that exist, there is a group-wide collaboration in terms of the industries that participate there to say, what are the things that the other people are doing, and how do we replicate those things to other organizations that are not doing that? So, using an example of PDS as an right? So it's a great thing. You want to be able to warn a person when there is a mobile equipment or there's a person or the interaction is about to take place. And now DMRE, what they do is when these techs are working and they are about, improving even the safety of the workers, they then get to make these things, part of the law to say you have to have this thing. And hence we need to continue innovating and making sure that they are part of the innovations discussions because we want to eliminate fatalities.
Of course.
Who would not want a technology that would eliminate fatalities?
Exactly.
If you come up with it and it works at a specific mining organization, the DMRE will be an advocate of it. To say, no, guys, this thing needs to be done everywhere. It's the right thing to
do,
Right. So innovation is there. We are driving it. And when you look at the Department of Science and Technology, I was sitting in one of the other briefings the other day, but it was more on the digital health side. But they also have one in the mining side. So you see, even with the government, they are trying to come up with a mechanism, and they provide funding for people with ideas to say, let's create our own solutions, and commercialize them. Because currently what happens is we go outside of the country to go and buy tech and bring it here, but it doesn't mean we don't have the capacity here. We've got the capacity, the capability. And we also need these mining operations to start putting money into these innovations. You've got the Mandela Mining Precinct. They do quite a lot of research and getting to understand what are some of the tech innovations that they can put in place. You've got mining organizations investing into universities to say, guys, help us. We don't have the time to be thinking about these things. Help us use your research frameworks and your practical proven ways of how we could eventually implement this. So the interest is there. But at the higher level is that if we've built these things and the culture of mining in the country, it's at the level that we can even eliminate, fatalities. We can mine efficiently. We can embrace technology. Investments now starts coming.
Investments start pouring in.
Yes, but we must also take our communities with us. And we need to think long term to say, beyond mining, what else needs to happen? I'm sure you've seen, a lot of community, unrests where they attack the mines, shut down the mines.
What are you doing for us?
What are you doing for us? But not everyone
you're polluting our environment.
Pollution is about access to opportunities to do business with the mines.
Noise levels.
It's a whole lot of things. So what is it that we're also doing in line with us implementing tech, where we say we want it to be efficient, don't have too many people in the operation? What are we doing on the side to make sure that these people don't get to now attack this multi-billion rands investment?
There's so much. We're talking about.
So it's a combination of
things. I like the fact that you say that the key stakeholders are embracing tech solutions because they can see the benefits.
Yeah.
Before we go, we haven't touched on the role of technology on environmental sustainability, greener energy solutions, as well as decarbonization. At the Mining Indaba, I hosted a talk around the greener solutions, and we were talking even about rehabilitation of mines and drone technology to do exploration, those kinds of things, because we want to reduce emissions and pollution, and environmental sustainability is a big thing. What is the role of tech to achieve all of those advances? Sustainability, environmental stuff, and greener solutions.
Yeah. So tech plays a very huge role. Let's call it in the ESG arena. And focusing on the E part of the ESG.
Of course.
So let's use an example you've just mentioned, drone technology. About 3 years ago, just before COVID, I attended an IMAC conference.
IMAC, okay.
Yes. Similar to Mining Indaba. So I call it the Mining Indaba of Australia.
Of Australia, okay.
So I attended the IMAC in Melbourne, and I met this, brilliant, smart lady who's the CEO of a company that does, rehabilitation using drones.
Okay.
Right? So as an individual, for you to go and plant seeds, these trees and all, it takes forever. It takes a whole lot of time. And, they've come up with a very smart way of accelerating rehabilitation using drones. Right. So that's very important. So you can see that tech does play a very critical role. So when it comes to environmental monitoring as well, there's certain things that we cannot monitor. Just by using our eyes.
Our naked eye.
You've got devices. You can have devices around your fence. You can understand how much dust you are actually are generating. Then you can come up with smarter ways of dust suppression.
To reduce it.
To reduce that. Instead of just having a truck going all around roads and just putting, water or whatever dust suppression chemicals.
Manual technologies.
So it plays a very, very, very important role in that aspect. And there's many other examples as well, right?
Sure.
And I think a lot of mining organizations are also starting to embrace that, because if we don't do that, the whole thing about sustainability will just become a dream.
And when you deal with that E of the ESG, the social part becomes part of the solution as well, because the communities are not going to see what you're doing and you're not polluting or emitting CO2 or CO3 as much, and then they can climb on the wagon of supporting initiatives by the operations. I'm sure it's actually intertwined.
No, it is intertwined. So look, you've got some mining operations that are supplying water to the entire municipality.
Okay.
All that groundwater they get from their mines, they process it and they push it, and we get to use it. So those are great initiatives.
Yeah. And communities must benefit all the time.
They need to benefit. They need to benefit.
My friend, I know you have to travel, but this has been wonderful. I'm going to ensure that you come back, because this discussion around tech adoption is a big one.
Yeah.
And we're going to want to explore it in the next series. And definitely we would like to invite you. And also, if you could just share some case studies of your clients that have implemented groundbreaking solutions successfully, and we can see benefits realization in them. And those case studies are powerful because then the community in the sector can see it's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.